Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for the Home Instead Aging Well series. We are coming to you live from MCC North Express, and today we are talking about all things women. So we've pulled together some subject matter experts. From Home Instead, we have Chandra Wilkins, and from the Elk Ridge Village Senior Living Center, Kaylee Chilton. So let's jump right in. Women from different ages have different things that they're concerned with, but I thought we should start with the M word, right? Menopause. So is this just, have attitudes changed? What's going on with menopause?
Well, I think people think it's a disease or a disorder, and it's actually just a phase of life. And we just have to go through it and educate ourselves and know that we will come out on the other side, right? You know, you might gain a little weight, but you can always lose it, that type of thing. I don't know, what do you think, Kaylee?
The joys of being a woman.
Right, right?
Yes. I'm probably one that you don't want to talk to on this topic because I had an ablation and it put me into menopause, and I was on the downward slide of it and didn't even know it. So I'm one of those that had a breeze through that whole cycle and finished it up before I even really knew it had started.
Yeah, I had some female surgeries, and I experienced those sweats at night where you wake up and you feel like you ran a marathon and you're like, what just happened? But after I had some female surgeries, I'm good. I'm all about getting through it.
Well, it sounds like it's different for all women.
I think so. I think every woman has a different experience. I think stress in their life, kind of can throw some symptoms into high gear. Didn't you say you just got hot one day? You were just hot.
Mm-hmm. I just was warm at night. Kick off the covers, and then an hour later I was cold and put them back on. So my symptoms were just that night warmness.
Yeah, and I know some women say they have all the symptoms. They get depressed, and I think it's that estrogen and those other hormones that aren't kicking things out, and then some women just don't want to talk to their doctor about it. They just, they've got kids, appointments, work. They don't have time to even go to the doctor. They just know, okay, this is premenopause, menopause, and then we're done. So
it's a natural phase of life, and then as you're aging as well, so it happens at different stages for different people, right? So it can happen earlier, it can happen later. Some women can go early in their 40s, while you have some women who don't go till they're practically 60.
Yeah, I read somewhere that it can last 7 years to 14 years, and there's 3 different stages of menopause: premenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. And the post is 12 months after your last menstrual cycle. And they even recommend you, in the article, I think it was the New York Times, they recommend that women stay on birth control. I was like, wow, okay.
Well, that is something I hadn't heard before, so that is something that everyone should know.
Yes, I think so. Can you imagine?
And I think just the open and honest communication with your doctor. If you're feeling like you're having changes, my doctor just did a blood panel to see where I was in that whole process.
Some women are reluctant to talk to their doctor, and these are the doctor is the exact person who you should be talking to. So how do you empower women? How can women feel empowered to talk to their doctor? How do they initiate those difficult conversations?
I think in our society, we have to get a mindset of the doctors work for us. And I think a lot of women especially, they go to their doctor and whatever their doctor says, that's gospel. And they're reluctant to ask questions. And so I think it's important that they are aware that the doctor works for us, they're educated, they were trained to handle these topics and subjects and help their patients. So I think they just need to be empowered to not have any stigmas and just be open and honest.
And I think if you're not feeling that with your doctor, then it's probably not a bad idea to go to a different doctor if you can't have those honest and open relationships and conversations with them.
Well, and it's okay to, if you're a female and you want a female doctor, that's okay. And it's also okay to say, hey, did you have children? Have you experienced this? What did you do? I think those are all good questions to ask your physician so that if they can relate to what you're going through.
Well, we talked a little bit about women feeling empowered, but what about caregivers too? So that's another situation where if you have to talk to a doctor, sometimes if you're giving care, whether you're a mother caregiving or whether you're caring for maybe a senior or someone in your home, you don't feel empowered to ask those questions.
Of the person you're caring for? Mm-hmm. Yeah, aren't those hard topics?
Very difficult conversations. How do you have that difficult conversation? How do you initiate? If you notice something, I mean, you don't want someone to shut down.
Right.
So how do you have any recommendations for having those type of conversations?
You know, yeah, I just think a role reversal and how I would approach. My family's very open, so I would just say to my mom, hey, what's going on? This is going on. But for those other types of families, you know, you just have to figure out how to break the icebreaker, whether it's sitting down, having a cup of coffee and say, hey, I noticed that I saw that the bed had a little bit of staining. Are you okay? If you approach it from that aspect, is there something I can do for you? Instead of telling, hey, why is this happening? I saw that you fell. I saw that there's a dent in the car. Did you back into a mailbox? Just approach it as, hey, how did that dent get on the car? What happened there? That type of thing, instead of being accusational.
Yeah, it's a different type of tone. It's more of a, I want to help you tone versus an accusatory tone.
Right. And I think caregivers, especially us women, we've got so much to do in a day. Okay, so now I'm with mom. I've got all these things to get done with her. And then I've got kids to take to soccer. So we don't stop and think about our tone and how we're interacting with our family members. I think we just, hey, there's a dent in the back of the car. Did you back into something? Instead of, hey, what's going on? I saw the dent. Something like that.
How are you feeling? Why are you feeling this way?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You bring up a very good point, Chandra, tone. Sometimes my kids will talk to me about tone because maybe I'm using that tone that I use at work and they remind me that I'm at home now. And so, I mean, so I think tone is everything.
Yeah, it's never what you ask. I think it's all about how you ask it. And it's very hard when you're in that role reversal situation to remember that you are the child, because all of a sudden you're carrying all these burdens of now you want to make sure, are my parents' bills getting paid? Are they eating? Are they being socially active, but not too socially active? I mean, it's all those things. Can they still drive? So I think I don't think it's what you ask. I think it's all about how you ask it.
And there's a variety of different type of caregivers, because you have someone who may be doing caregiving for someone who's in the home, but someone who may be a caregiver, but not necessarily, maybe they have someone who's in an assisted living place. So how can you feel connected to someone who's not, they're depending on you, you're their outside resource to the world, but they're not living with you?
I almost think it's a buffer, don't you? I think families who have the home instead caregiver in their home, it's kind of a buffer. I think the client and the caregiver develop friendships, and so it's more easier to talk to your friends than it is your daughter about some things. And then the family can talk to the caregiver and they communicate. So I think that it helps in that aspect. I think it's a positive.
I think too, sometimes it's okay for the doctor to be the one to bring up those difficult talking points. Let them be the bad guy and you can remain the family member.
It really sounds like a team approach. So we know there's an issue, but what's the best way to handle it? Because someone who's receiving that care might not want to hear that from their adult child. Who they're, I mean, I look at my children and I just see that chubby face of when they were like a baby. And so I can definitely understand how, even though you're in this position, you're paying the bills, you're making sure everything is taken care of. They might not want to hear that from their child.
So how many of us have been an expert in our field and our own family members don't look to us as the expert? They'll call somebody else and you're like, hey, wait a minute, I do this for a living. Like, I
am paid for my time to do this.
Exactly.
What about caregiver stress? What are some of the stressors and what recommendations do you have for dealing with them?
I think people have to, and Kaylee, you might be able to touch on this too, it's okay to take a break. It's called respite stays, where it's okay to have somebody come in and help you take care of your loved one. It's okay to not also want to have the conversation about, the big one is driving. How many times have we heard family members like, how do I tell my dad he can't drive? It's okay to call the doctor prior to the appointment and ask that this topic be covered in the next appointment. It's okay to ask for help, and I don't think a lot of caregivers do that. I think they feel the weight and they want to do it all themselves because maybe their loved one has dementia and they're scared about how they're going to behave, and so they don't ask for help. So I think that's a big thing. It's okay to ask for help.
And it's hard to ask for help, but then also to take time for yourself. It's hard to do that when you're caring for others and you may have your own family at home and then your parents, but really take time for yourself and do things that you enjoy and love doing to just re-energize yourself as well during that time.
And don't think your loved one that you're caring for is too fragile or going to break. Maybe take them out and do some things with them. You'd be surprised what they like to do too. So you don't always have to keep them in their house and run all the errands. You can take them with you to do some things. So I think that also helps too.
Infusing fun, because there are things that you have to do as a caregiver, but infusing some fun in it sounds so important.
Right, it is. Like the grocery game, guess how much the can of tomato sauce is going to cost especially with dementia patients. Just interacting with them in situations like that, coming up with fun games, taking them out, and don't be worried that they're going to embarrass you. They're not. I mean, just interact with them, take them out, do things with them.
I think you're never too old to have new experiences. If you want to do something that's on your bucket list, let's look at that and how can we make that happen for you. I think you're never too old to do that and pursue your passions.
Well, you say we're never too old to have new experiences. How can we embrace aging, and what do you think that looks like? I mean, it's happening.
Right.
So
to all of us, every day.
It's happening, there's changes occurring. How do we embrace that for ourselves, and then how do we help as caregivers? How do we help our loved ones embrace that things may be different?
Once again, I think it's all about sitting down and listening, ask your parents, what do you want? What's 10 things you want to do in the next year? Start out that way with that conversation, and then maybe you'll find there's stuff you both want to do, so do those things together, but also make what they want to do, their new experience, happen, because then that's a new experience for you too. So yeah, I think that's one way of doing that, is just having the conversation and start engaging and doing things. So
I think
don't they say it's the first time you do something is the hardest?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's so important. I know I had to have a interesting conversation with my dad, and he retired, and after he retired, he had this other job, and I said, you get to do whatever you want. What do you want to do? He says, well, I want to work. He said, and that was surprising to me, and he said, I don't want to sit around. He said, I would rather work this job. And he said, I like it. I like having a place to go every day. And I was like, oh, okay.
Well, that sense of being needed and that sense of responsibility and that sense of contributing, I don't think that changes at any age. I think it matters.
We all have a need to have a purpose, a sense of purpose and why we're here.
Yeah, exactly. But I think seniors should stop working and do something fun.
Yes.
I think it's a generation thing too. So, but.
Well, definitely, because you work your whole life and you get to, and even if, some people work in the home and some people work outside of the home. If you're working in the home, you're working too. Right. I did it. That was some work. And I think there's a little bit less appreciation.
Yes. Right.
Like, this did not happen by magic.
Right.
So there's even at least when you're outside of the home, there's recognition.
Right.
And then in the home, there's not. So you spend all these years working, whether it's in the home, whether it's outside the home. And then so my thought is, now you get to do whatever you want to do. And I think generations do play a part of that.
I do too. I think some, like the baby boomers, they're struggling because all they've done is work. So to take time for themselves is harder than Generation X, my generation. We're okay with that, and then you still have some veterans at Elk Ridge from World War II, and they're almost workaholics. Even they want to put dishes out or all kinds of things. So I think it is a generation, and just if you can get your parent to do something with you, then I think it'll be okay. But they want to work, and it's like, it's insane. You've worked all your life. Go jump out of a plane if that's what you want to do. It. You know what I mean? That's
Go have some fun. Write the great American novel.
Exactly. Go on a cruise. Well, maybe not a cruise, but but yeah.
Well, one of the things I talked to my mother about, my mother's always wanted to write, and she's written off and on. And I said, I would like to know you as a woman, not as my mom. I would like to know how you came to make the decisions that you made. And so why don't you write about where you came from? And so she said she's starting to do that.
Oh, how
wonderful.
fun.
And that's a gift you can give your family, because as they are looking at us, as we talked about, as your adult children, we're seeing them only in one aspect.
Right. Right,
I call those legacy projects. How do you want to be remembered? And tell me what you were like as a little girl, and what advice would you give me as a woman? And so I think that's important to look at that as you're at later stages. What wisdom you can pass on to your family, and what do you want to be remembered for?
And to take time to write it down when you're not in the moment. You have time to think about the different topics and how they grew and their experiences. I think that's great.
Well, we go through different stages as we're aging as women. And, when I was younger, one of my stages was I thought I knew a lot. And then as I've aged, I will accept wisdom from anyone, any age. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can hear wisdom from children, from people in their 20s. But so what are some of those different stages that women go through as we're aging?
What comes to my mind is I stayed home with my boys and raised them in the home, and you just think that you're never going to get through that stage, and then you blink and my son just got married this weekend. So it happens so quickly that enjoy those moments.
Yeah, the kids, it's amazing how fast. Like one day you're taking them to kindergarten, and the next day you're taking your grandchild to kindergarten. It's like, whoa! So just to be in the moment, I think women have a tough time just being in the moment, because we have so much to do, and we feel so much pressure to support everybody around us that it's difficult for us to just enjoy the moment, and whatever that may be, at Thanksgiving dinner, and just taking a calming moment to look at all the achievements and what you've contributed to all these people being successful and where they're at in life. I don't think we do that enough. I think we just rush and on to the next thing that's checked off the list, and I don't think we do a very good job. I don't, of just being in the moment.
Well, I would definitely say during this time that I would say one of the gifts that I have received is the ability to slow down and appreciate where we are and what we have. And we've always had family dinners, but I appreciate that even more. It's like a debrief of the day. So just the ability to slow down and enjoy those moments that you don't have all the time. Like I was thinking, I have 2 children at home. I have a sophomore and I have a senior, and I thought, how many more dinners am I going to make?
Right.
This is going to look a little bit different, and so that infuses even a little bit more joy that I get to make dinner for my kids. We get to have these conversations.
Right. And just seeing their different viewpoints. So I have 4 adult children, and when they come home and we all get together, it's very interesting to hear their perspective, because it's very different than mine. Sure. But then if I slow down and I think about how I was in my 20s, there's still hope. They'll come around to my way at me. Because I thought the same way they did. But it's more fun for me watching their stages, and that's what I enjoy when they come home and share and talk. I'm always amazed at, okay, I raised you, and okay, you think that way. All right, bless your heart.
Well, and maybe at that stage where we thought maybe we knew everything.
Right, it's exactly that stage. Yeah, exactly.
Well, my daughter is turning 21 in a couple of weeks, and so we were talking about, I was shocked to discover that she did not want to spend her birthday with me.
Oh my.
How dare she?
Turning 21. But it was interesting. She's like, oh, these are the things we think we're going to do. And I'm like, oh, that place is still open? And so there are different stages that you go through, and I think you can find joy in each of them. And maybe that's part of the trick to embracing everything is finding joy in those moments and where you are.
Right, exactly. exactly.
Each gray hair, or is a significant. It's a reminder of the journey travel.
Okay.
We earn those.
Yeah, is that what it is? Oh, okay. Okay.
Absolutely. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the flu. So we're entering flu season. I read somewhere that in New Zealand right now, the flu is down 60% based upon the behaviors or the protocols that were implemented for COVID, down 60%. So as we're looking at going into this flu season, what are some things that we should be aware of or keep in mind?
Wash your hands, and then wash your hands again, and then wash your hands again. I do like the elbow bump since COVID. So I think that's a good idea. I read an article that people are back to hugging, but they're turning their head in the opposite direction when they go in for the hug, because you're not going to you'll pass less germs doing that way than you just shaking hands with someone. So, because you think about it, your hands touch everything, and then you touch your face, and so yeah. And then I do think the masks do help with the flu season. So. And getting your flu vaccination is important too.
Now, Kaylee, what about if we have loved ones who are at a senior center? Is there access? Do the protocols change as we enter flu season?
Well, the protocols are changing day by day. With COVID, we're constantly having meetings and looking at protocols, CDC recommendations, and things of that nature. Currently, we are allowing family visits at Elk Ridge. In our assisted living, their courtyard visits, and we will also take our memory care residents out to a courtyard to visit a loved one. Hospice situations, we are allowing hospice care to come into Elk Ridge. We don't want to deny care to those folks and the family present at end of life as well. And then with independent living, we are allowing one adult visitor into their apartments after health screening, and all of that is after health screening. We're doing the temperature readings on everybody that comes in and asking them all those health questions.
That's fantastic, so that loved ones can stay connected.
Yes.
So at Elk Ridge, has technology been introduced to help connection as well?
It has. They're FaceTiming their loved one. We've done Zoom and Skype, so everybody's learning all these technology helps and benefits as well, because that's not something I didn't Zoom my parents or anyone in our family until all of this COVID hit, and then we're looking at creative ways to stay connected. And I think that's important to let them know we're still there, we still love them, and finding those creative ways to keep in contact.
And Homestead has a telehealth pad, and that's how our families are also staying connected. Their families can send them pictures that go straight into this telehealth pad, so they can see the grandkids. They can email through it. They can do face-to-face calls with them. So I think it's going to be a norm, and our generation was getting into that technology. Then COVID rolled around, and now everybody has to. And so that's really a neat thing, is to teach your parents how to use the technology out there so they can stay connected. Because even when we have a vaccine for COVID and this passes, I think there's some best practices to be learned for future times, like the flu, and when a loved one has a chronic illness, maybe a kidney infection, where some people have dialysis that are older and they just can't be around a lot of people. I think that's a plus with this technology. We can learn and take some best practices from it for future reference.
And don't be afraid to ask the community. I know
Right.
my grandma fell and broke her hip through all of this, and she's down in the Branson area. So I've called and talked to the nurses to see if I could set up a Zoom or Skype visit with her so that I can see her face to face and interact with her. And the staff is more than willing to set that up and to designate a time to have that appointment. And I know we are too at Elk Ridge, so we're happy to make those connections.
Well, so we talked about staying connected when you have a loved one who is in another location, but what about just staying connected in your home? Because as you mentioned, Chandra, sometimes there's this task list, and I think sometimes as women we can be taskmasters, and we're focused on the list. So how can you engage in your home and make sure that you're making those intentional steps to connect with someone who's in your home, and it's not just the task list?
I think it's just inclusion. Like if one of your tasks is to make dinner, have that loved one come and help you make dinner. You know, they're not going to break. They can still do dishes. They still can cut up vegetables. So it's just giving them a purpose and making them a part of whatever task you have to do, you know, or asking, hey, I've got a couple loads of laundry to do. Can you help me sort clothes? And it's just amazing when you're doing those everyday things, the conversations that will develop as you're, you know, maybe you're folding a load of laundry or something like that. So I think, once again, recognizing when there is time, making time, and doing whatever it is you're doing at that time.
Enjoying those moments in between.
Yeah, I've had some of the best conversations with my mom when we've folded laundry. I know that sounds crazy, but we have.
One of the things that was funny, my oldest one said to us this weekend, was when he was growing up, we had a basket that they had to put their cell phones in during dinner, and he had to have his phone charged upstairs in the kitchen, couldn't take it down to bed with him. And I thought, why did we go away from those habits?
Right.
Let's get that basket back out and get those phones in the kitchen instead of having them in the bedroom and at dinner table.
Yeah. Well, and just letting the grandkids know they can Zoom, back to the technology, letting the grandkids know you can call grandma now if you have the technology, you know, or it's okay to go over and see grandma of a task. Hey, I don't know how to set this up. Go over there and set that up for your grandmother so I can talk to her on a regular basis. So, yeah.
Integrating your loved one into those day-to-day activities, because they're going to happen anyways, and then you can have those special moments or conversations.
Yeah.
I know, I was talking to my kids one day when they were little. What they had to do is they had to throw their laundry down the steps, and then I would take care of it. And so my son told me the other day, he said, I sure do miss those days when I would throw my laundry down the steps and they would magically come back up folded.
He does.
It was not magic. It was me. So we talked a little bit about the flu, but as the flu season is upon us, we're still also dealing with COVID-19. And so what do we know about this vaccine?
Not a whole lot. We know that it's supposed to be coming out around November from what we've read, but we don't know a whole lot yet. So hopefully they'll release more information as it gets closer. All I know is that it's supposed to be coming. So do you know any more?
I don't. And so that makes me leery not hearing about what this vaccine, the side effects and things of that nature, to where you wonder, as healthcare professionals, we may be asked to take that first wave of vaccinations. Personally, I'd rather wait to see what happens with that vaccine versus being the guinea pig, if you will, to try out the vaccine and see what happens.
And I think they're going to have to do a lot of education so we don't feel like that. I think there's a reason why there's several of us that are like, no, not the first wave. Let me know how that works out for you. But I think they need to do faster education and keeping us in the loop of can we take it with the pneumonia shot, the flu, because this time of year we get so many vaccinations.
Yeah.
Is it okay, now we've got another one to take. So is that okay to take, and is it going to interact with any medicines that a loved one is taking, or what if they have chronic heart disease? Is the vaccine going to be okay with that? So I think the government still has to do a lot of education for Americans before they feel 100% safe.
Absolutely. And I just want to mention that we did save time at the end for questions. In case anyone has any questions, go ahead and throw those questions up in the chat. We do have someone monitoring the chat, and so we will have time for questions at the end. And so we're just talking about the vaccine, and we don't know too much about it. But what I'm wondering about too, there's a lot of talk about supplements. So I am a person who I don't like to take something that I don't necessarily need. And so I'm not a big supplement person, but from a healthcare perspective, what do you think about supplements?
I think you have to educate yourself. For women over 45, between 45 and 65, that's when our bones start to get more fragile. So I think we do need to take a supplement for that, but I think you have to educate yourself on what stage of life are you in and what supplements are going to work. Like, I'm not going to take a prenatal pill, when I'm 49 years old. But what is going to work, and make sure you know why you're taking it, and talk to your physician about, just don't take a one-a-day vitamin until you've talked to your doctor, and make sure that that's okay. And don't take too much. I have had patients that have taken too much. of something and it has made them sick. So we're like, did your doctor tell you to take all these? Well, no. Okay. So yeah, make sure you talk to your physician. But I think where are you at in your stage of life, and just know why you're taking it.
And something that might work for someone might not necessarily work for you.
Right.
And then some of the supplements as well, I don't know, the regulations might be different, or the claims on the bottle might not match exactly what they say they do.
Always listen for that FDA approved. A lot of them are not FDA approved, or if they're a color, how much of that pill is dye, and actually are you getting a nutritional value from taking it? So I think those are important things to know too.
And then what about supplements? If you're a caregiver for someone and someone wants to take a supplement, hey, I heard I need fish oil or whatever it may be.
There's so many different types of caregivers. I think if it's a family member, education. If it's a paid caregiver, then they need to, if the client can make that decision, then just make sure you help the client be educated about it, you know. Everybody has the right. Just because you're taking care of them doesn't mean they can't make decisions for themselves. So I think you have to be, there's a fine line. You have to be aware of that. So just if you're concerned, just find an article and say, hey, here's an article about fish oil. I wanted you to read it, you know, that type of thing.
And talk to your doctor and pharmacist to see if that's appropriate with your other medications.
Yeah.
Are there, you mentioned FDA, are there some keywords we can look for that might suggest potentially that a supplement might not live up to the description?
I think the FDA approved one. What other ones can you, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. And vitamins aren't FDA approved. I don't know of any vitamins that, I can't think of any. There might be some, but I would just read the ingredients and make sure, once again, it's going to be, the pharmacist is a good resource too, because they know all your medicines. If you talk to your heart doctor about something, your primary doctor may not know what you're taking for your heart condition. So I think pharmacy is a good resource too.
And then one question I've always had is sometimes you'll hear, well, this was tested with this many people or in this group, and I'm wondering who gave the test.
Right? Yeah. Is it Consumers? What's that website when you want to buy something like a TV or
Consumer
Reports?
Yes, maybe use Consumer Reports. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
Well, here's something that is on our minds as we're entering into what will soon be the holiday season: weight gain. Is it inevitable?
So yeah, I just read an article, and it said women over 40 become less active, and I was like, who wrote this article? What? Where are they at? Because I haven't become less active over 40. So I think I have read that women do gain about a pound no matter what after 40, but I don't think we become less active. So yeah, I mean, you have to watch what you eat, everything in moderation. It's so hard around the holidays though. Yeah, it's so hard.
And then what about from the caregiver perspective, if you have someone who you're caring for and you notice that they're picking up a little bit of weight?
Well, you have to educate yourself. Do they have diabetes? You have to know all those conditions, and you know, once again, if they want to eat, I mean, I'm kind of like, just don't tell me what to eat, you know, especially when you get into your 80s and stuff. You're like, you want to have an extra bowl of ice cream? Let them have an extra bowl of ice cream.
Fantastic. So I'm hearing really there's this respect.
Yes.
A respect for the person that you're caring for.
Right. I mean, if they have diabetes and they're dipping into the cookies a little too much, okay, have a conversation, you know. I don't know, you deal with that kind of stuff too. How do you guys handle it?
I think like you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to be respectful.
Can you talk a little bit more about the caregivers?
Okay.
The different types of caregivers. How can they help?
So, home instead caregivers, we have different levels of caregiving that we provide. We can take care of almost anybody in the home. It just depends. Everybody's circumstances is a little different. So we would go out and talk to the prospective client and their family and see what services were needed. And then we customize a care package, and we have caregivers that are trained to take care of people at different levels. So that's the paid caregiver, and then there's the non-paid caregiver, which is us three ladies. And then there's the nurses and the doctors, and so there's all different types of caregivers. I think everybody who has a senior in their home or a child is a caregiver. Yeah.
Absolutely. And even when you're at Elk Ridge, people require different amounts of caregiving.
Right.
Well, we have some questions. We said we'd save some time for questions at the end. And we have a question that came across on our chat. How can people free themselves of the myths and stereotypes about aging?
Do something they didn't think they'd ever do. Do something on your bucket list.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, just, you know, the only person that can hold you really back is you. So yeah, that's what I think.
Age is a number.
Exactly.
Give yourself permission to do something that you want to do regardless of age.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
Like one of the things that I like to do is before this COVID-19 new reality, is I like to do CrossFit. And I like it because every single week there's something that I have to do that I've never done before. And I have no idea how I'm going to do it. And then I do it and it's amazing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, stuff like that. If you want to go to all 50 states, then make that happen. You know, figure out how to make that happen. Or if you want to become a great baker, then become a great baker. You know, just don't let nobody tell you can't do something because of an age.
Absolutely. We have another one here. As caregivers, what are the most common complaints you hear from women that you care for?
Oh, repeat that again.
As caregivers, what are the most common complaints you hear from women?
As a caregiver, as a woman?
Well, I mean, like, for example, I know I've already told my kids since they were very little, I said, look, when I'm old, you need to make sure that my hair is done because you know how I am about my hair. And I told them I want to dress contemporary, not trendy, because I'll be old, but I do want to, like, I've given them a list of instructions. And so I would imagine if whatever is important to you, that may still be important to you.
Yeah, I think having that type of fun conversation with your family member is, like me, I have certain requests. Similar to yours, don't let my makeup or hair look bad. I will get you. So having that conversation about making those decisions, where does your loved one want to live? We've heard this, don't put me in a nursing home. And so then that person, that individual you're caring for, you physically can't care for them anymore. And I think we've seen this, I see this a lot with wives. They are taking care of their husbands and they can't even lift them anymore, but they're still doing it. They haven't asked for help. And when we ask why, it's, well, he didn't want to be in a nursing home. Okay, but did you ever have that deep conversation about, okay, of course I'm not going to put you in a nursing home if you're walking and talking, but maybe they've had a stroke and it's a lot different circumstances. So I think women get frustrated with that and they feel guilt. So they don't make decisions because of guilt. And so I think it is important to have those conversations about, I want a mausoleum. That's what I want. I
think pre-planning is
Yeah.
very important. Have those conversations before the event happens, because then...
For the crisis, yeah.
Right. And we see time and time again, people wait too long to make that transition into retirement living, and then they don't enjoy the amenities that they could have enjoyed had they moved 5 years earlier. And a lot of the comments are, I wish I would have moved sooner.
Right.
So have those conversations before it happens and know what your loved one wants.
Yeah, I think I think people think when they have those conversations, it's all about the will and it's all about this and that, and it's really not. It's about the spiritual, physical, and mental health of the individual you're going to be responsible to care for. And so it's way more than their living will and their will. It's, what do you want? Okay, you want to stay at home. That's great. but here's this situation, when does that stop and this start, and giving permission to the caregiver to be able to make some decisions that normally we would think, when you're looking at the outside in, well, of course she wouldn't want you to, throw out your hip, picking you up out of the shower because you fell. But that's that caregiver's reality, and all they know is they made a promise. So I think it's important to have those conversations, and it's not about just the will and all these other things. It's, like I said, spiritual, physical, and mental for the caregiver and for the person being cared for.
What are some of those questions, or how do you approach that subject with the spiritual, the physical, and the mental?
I think you can start out by family history. I've had families start out doing a family tree, and then, I've said, talk about the aunt that had Alzheimer's. Well, Mom, it does run in the family. I know you want to stay home. How do we make that happen if you have dementia really where you're wondering, you don't recognize people? So I think you start out maybe with a project like a family tree, and then you start talking about health conditions. And I think some of those topics will just naturally come up. And then if they say, well, I don't want to go to a nursing home, well, then you can say, okay, well, tell me about that, why? And a lot of times it's a generational thing where they think of the nursing home in the 60s and 70s, and they don't know what amenities are out there today. And they don't know how they can stay at home even. They just know they want to stay at home. So, okay, let's call home instead and see what we can do for your home to modify it to keep you at home. Those types of things. I think you just naturally have those conversations, but you can start out talking about family members and that type of thing, and then I think conversation comes pretty natural.
And I think that mindset of a nursing home is completely different than what's offered today.
Right.
You come out to Elk Ridge and it's a beautiful lodge with a waterfall, and we've got activities and church services and breakfast groups and Bible studies. And so it's not like the nursing home back when our grandparents or great-grandparents worked in one in their younger years. It's completely different. Assisted living as well. It's completely different, and there's a lot of amenities and group activities, and we are looking exactly like you mentioned, spiritual, physical, emotional well-being of that individual.
And you can have a caregiver in your home no matter where your home is at. So if you have a loved one or you are in one of those communities, you can have a caregiver come in and help you in those communities too, so that you can age successfully in place wherever you're living at.
It sounds like those conversations, not only are they helpful for knowing what the person might want, but it's a gift, because if that person is unable to tell you what they want, then there's this conversation, well, I think they wanted this, or no, I think they'd want to do that. And so it's a gift to know explicitly what someone would want.
Well, and I think it's also, like hobbies, so that if you do have caregivers come in, my uncle, he was a big time hunter, and he liked the Dallas Cowboys. So those caregivers that haven't lived with them their whole lives or know them, they know what to talk about and engage them when they do come in and help take care of them. So I think it's all about that, which goes back to spiritual, physical, and mental.
From our chat, where can I find more resources about caregiving? And I know your website has amazing resources about caregiving.
So you can go to Homestead Omaha /100.com, and we have a blog, we have educational series. You can call us too. Don't ever be afraid to pick up the phone or chat with one of our experts online. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions, and if we don't have the answer, we'll find the answer for you. So yeah.
What are some of your go-to strategies for dealing with, I know this is something you guys have never dealt with before, for dealing with older family members who may be extremely stubborn?
Well, candy always, chocolate.
Chocolate's good in any situation.
I think there's a reason everybody reacts. So if you have a family member that is refusing help, it's a matter of having a calm conversation on why. There's a reason they do. There's a reason they don't want that service, and maybe they feel like they're giving up independence. A lot of times that's what we find, and they don't want to give up their independence. But once we unwind all that, and they figure out, oh, I'm going to have someone in my home that's going to make dinner for me, and I'm going to have a companion, and we can watch TV and interact, and they can take me out to my appointments, then it becomes easier. But it's unwinding that anxiety of why are they stubborn? They're not just being stubborn to be stubborn. There's a reason. So it's about taking the time, and that's what our staff does, is we help families navigate that conversation so that we can get into the home and help them. And a lot of times we overcome that. A lot of times when you talk to a father who's older, well, Molly's got to work and she's got football season coming up, and so she just wants to make sure you're taken care of. Well, I can take care of myself. Okay, well, Molly does these things for me. We're just going to have Home Instead do them. And then it's like, oh, okay, they're not taking my independence. They're not saying I can't do it myself. It's a supplement to my daughter. So it's just unwinding it.
I think the important thing is the relationship. Building that relationship and trust with them, and then, like you said, breaking it down. Why do you feel that way? I always like to ask too, what are you looking for as you make that transition into retirement living or this next step? What does that look like for you? And then digging deeper, and it may be a want or a hobby or different things like that, that you really need to get to know the individual and their family members.
And what's their perspective? You have to learn that.
Their perspective would be pretty important to making them feel validated and empowered in the situation where things are changing.
Exactly. And how can they be a part of their, making the decision of having the caregiver come in? They need to be a part of that. You can't just make it for your parent. I don't think you should, but
no.
Kaylee, can you talk a little bit about hospice? What is hospice? How can you support a loved one in hospice? How can you support family members who are going through this process?
Sure. Hospice, I think when you're not in healthcare, that hospice connotation and just even the verbiage scares people. My loved one's going to die tomorrow. Right. And that's not the case. Hospice is wonderful. They've got volunteer services. They've got music therapy, pet therapy, nurses. It looks a little different, of course, during COVID time and what is allowed, but it's a support in addition to the caregiver or the retirement community, and it's a wonderful service for your loved one.
And how can, if we have a family member who's in hospice, how can we emotionally support ourselves, or what are some of the types of things that family members or caregivers go through?
Hospice is great because they also will provide chaplain services to help talk through. Social workers will help talk through with that family and the loved one if they're still cognitive and able to have those discussions. So they do provide all of those supports to not only the patient but their loved ones as well.
So right now, there are many of us who are having experiences that we haven't had before. Any recommendations on staying positive during these times and helping a loved one stay positive as well?
Boy, isn't that, and it's so hard. Because I have family members that are older, and they're isolating too much, and then I have the others who are not isolating enough. And so I think you just have to, like you said, I love that idea of writing their story down. So that's one way. I think, if you can get your family member, if they can still do that, to, take an hour and write down, their history and add to that every day. And then we have, like I said, we have a pad, a telehealth pad that has games on it, and family members can interact with their loved ones. I had a client the other day who just had her mom on the pad. She was watching her on her phone while she was cooking dinner. Just being purposeful about interaction is so important now, and not taking it for granted.
Let's talk a little bit about physical distancing, because it seems like we're all in different places. So we hear physical distancing, and then others have said really it should be more social distance. So I have my mom who believes physical distancing means that she is only in contact with 2 people And I told my mom, I said, well, you create your own circle where everyone is transparent about where they're going. And she said, this is my circle, these two people. And so my question is, how can we deal with isolation? There's potential isolation, especially as we're going into this holiday season, and these different thoughts about the physical distancing. We want to maintain protocol, CDC recommendations, but how do we educate even? Maybe it's an education piece, I'm unsure, so that our loved ones aren't feeling that isolation.
I think you just have to hear what their concerns are, and then if you want them at that event, you get everybody, you do the mom thing, and everybody's donning up a mask because they want their mom or dad at this event. So you just, once again, you unwind what the concern is, and you try to work them through that, and then you respect their wishes to get them at whatever activity. Or if it's just the opposite, where you can't get them to put a mask on, then it's like, well, okay, but so-and-so is concerned. Once they feel like they're doing it for somebody else, I think they will respect other people's wishes. So it's just having the conversation respectfully, and they're going to do what they're going to do. They're either going to choose to go to that activity or they're going to choose not to go to that activity. I know it's very hard for me not to tell my mom that I'm upset that she won't go to something that I'm learning to respect that this is how she's dealing with COVID. So it's just hard.
We've done social distancing at Elk Ridge with the dining and breaking it down into smaller group activities to keep everybody safe as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you about maintaining a healthy lifestyle, especially as we've talked about today. Women take on a lot of roles, and a lot of times when we're taking on roles, health gets pushed to the side. What are some things, small changes, that we can do today, that they can do as soon as we're done here? Because sometimes it's this big drastic, I'm gonna become a vegan, I'm gonna exercise 12 times a day. So that's not real. So what are some things that we can do right now to maintain a healthy lifestyle and inject or get on that path to a healthy lifestyle?
Park the car as far away from the door as possible. Mm-hmm. The 10,000 steps, those types of things. Use your phone, to count your steps. I don't know.
Exercise is very important,
Yeah.
and I think if you're home and have a walking path that you can walk, or if you're in home and you don't travel outside of the home, walk in the house and get your steps.
Right. Use the
watch
stairs if you can
videos.
still do the stairs. Everybody's sleep, make sure you get enough sleep at night.
Is sleep a big deal? I've heard that if you don't sleep enough, that it actually ages you, and that your body, while you're sleeping, it's regenerating. So let's talk about sleep a little bit. Why is that a big deal?
Well, I know I'm grumpy if I don't get I think it does go to a person's attitude. I mean, if you're tired, you're just not processing information like you would if you were well rested. I think infants sleep, up to 12 to 13 hours when they're first born, and then as we get older, we lose melatonin, and so it explains why a senior will be up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So I think it's being aware of your changes, and then if they do need melatonin, taking something to sleep. But I think if you don't have enough sleep, you're just not processing. You're not going to want to eat. You're going to be grumpy.
Is napping helpful? Day napping.
Oh, I think so.
Is that helpful?
I'd love a nap.
Yeah, I would love, what is it, 30 minutes is the best?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if you're tired, you're tired. And if you can't nap, if you have to work and you can't, then you need to sit down and figure out, what am I doing? I need to turn my phone off. I need to turn my TV off a half hour before I go to bed. Maybe reading helps you get to sleep faster, those types of things. But yeah, I think sleep is just as important as exercise.
When it comes to nutrition, if you're able to make some small steps, do those small steps matter?
Oh, I think so.
I think so.
Yeah,
too.
if you're diabetic, maybe a couple less cookies until the point where you're not eating any sugar cookies or, noodles, rice, just learning about what's going on with you. I didn't know diabetics shouldn't eat rice. until a family member recently became diagnosed with diabetes. I didn't know how much sugar was in pasta either. So I think just educating yourself, and then baby steps. You know, like now we use what's the squash that you can use as noodles?
Spaghetti squash.
Yeah, we use that now for spaghetti. So yeah.
And if you have a neighbor who you know is home and is isolating at home due to COVID, take them a healthy meal.
Right.
Do a delivery at their doorstep and then call them from the driveway and say, hey, I made some extra. Thought you might like some grilled chicken. Share that.
Or if you know somebody, if you have a dog and you know you have someone that wants to get out and walk, but they haven't been, ask them if they'll walk your dog for them. You know, people want, it goes back to feeling valued, and then maybe they will get that exercise and less isolation.
That is great advice. I would like someone to walk my dog for me.
Well, there you go. There you go.
And then that will help someone feel needed as well.
And they'll get their exercise. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So for resources for caregivers, go to the Home Instead,
Yep.
Home Instead
And
website.
100, yep. Yep.
And then there's a wealth of information
Yep.
on there as well.
Yep, we have education for the healthcare worker, we have education for the caregiver, we have education for the client, different, you know, what to do if your loved one is had a recent hospital stay, how to avoid a hospital stay, how to use technology to care for your loved one, all those types of things, how to modify the home, how to age in place successfully. It's just a lot of information.
Kaylee, our activity is going to look a bit different this year, especially as we're going into the holiday season. And how's that for family members as well? How does it look this year?
Sure. So activities do look different in a retirement community. At Elk Ridge, we're just tapering down the size. So if we can social distance and say 6 feet apart in a larger common area for a Bible study, we'll do that. If it's a smaller area and we have to keep it 10 or less, we'll do that as well and offer that exercise class 3 times a day versus just once a day. So we are doing activities. Some of them that they're doing at Elk Ridge are bingo, Bible studies, communion. We're having church services on site since people aren't able to go to church right now. And if they're not comfortable with joining their church, or maybe their church doesn't have a website or a Zoom link, we are offering that at Elk Ridge.
I just wanted to thank you both so much for being here today. You have provided just a wealth of information, a lot of great things to think about. Any last words regarding women's health? What is something women should know, or the people who love women should know?
Just be patient and embrace it. Just embrace change. Everybody goes through it. So
I think it's okay to take time for ourselves to recharge.
Absolutely. I'm Chandra Wilkins from Home Instead, Kaylee Chilton from Elk Ridge Village Senior Living. Thank you so much for being with us today. We do have some other events coming up for our Home Instead Aging Well series with issues related to men and veterans and financial health. So be sure to check out our website, mccneb.edu/CE for those dates and times, and we'll see you then. Thank you so much for joining us today.